here on the show or in our previous phone call was the attack on the substation in, was it California? On the power grid. Now, what bothered me was I read about this some 3 months after it happened. You know.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I, you know, of course, I'm like any normal, you know, adult. I get on the computer. I check CNN. I check Fox News. You know, MSNBC. All that. I read it every day, and I don't remember seeing one word printed about that anywhere. You know, I just happened to have somebody on Facebook. Yeah, it's a blackout. You know, I happened to see somebody on Facebook had a link to it, and I read it, and I thought, this can't be true. So I did my own research and dug further and confirmed it. And I was like, yeah, this really did happen. And I think that they would hide that from us just, you know, to control, you know, panic. They don't want people to panic, and they're afraid, you know, of us knowing the truth, of us knowing, you know, this is a real threat that's happening out there. It makes me think of, and I wish I could remember the name of it, fascinating, I don't know, documentary or kind of a movie on National Geographic, American Blackout.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That was great.
Oh my word, that was phenomenal, and I hope that it opened people's eyes at least a little to how lax, you know, the security is on our power grid. If I'm correct, I believe in the program it was an internet attack that they basically shut down the entire nation's power grid for, I think it was 10 days or something like that. And if any of the listeners out there haven't seen it, they really need to grab a hold of it, and because it was very eye-opening, and it's something that, you know, I played off in the book as well, that one of the ways to collapse our nation is through the infrastructure. You know, you take out the nation's power grid, we're screwed. One of the things that whenever I was researching, you know, whenever I was writing the first novel, Collapse, I did a lot of research, you know, into elements that would be in the book. Because like I said, I want it to be plausible. I want it to be believable. I want it to at least be, I want the foundation of it to at least be in fact. And then, of course, you know, expand from there and you have good fiction. But I remember reading several reports, you know, several things that they have estimated that if you took out our nation's power grid completely offline in 3 weeks, our nation would be in shambles, and it would take decades to bounce back from it. Because, I mean, you really think about that. Decades. Yeah, exactly, because something else that I play off in the book very, you know, quite a bit in both books, actually, the first book and the second book, was the way our society is today. We can't survive on our own. We just can't. That if the average American home, I remember this from my research, was the average American family is lucky to have 2 weeks worth of food in their own house at any given time.
Absolutely.
Meaning if you locked them in their house and did not let them out, they wouldn't have enough food to last 2 weeks. And 2 weeks, to me, is, you know, stretching it. I would go so far as to say, I could tell you personally, me right now, and I'm a little embarrassed to say it, I mean, we might have a week's worth of food in our house right now. We eat out all the time. We order pizza. We do all that. And, you know, what if something catastrophic were to happen right now? You know, after a few days, we wouldn't have any food. You know, yeah. It's something that, you know, like I can't believe I wrote these novels, and, you know, that I'm not practicing what I preach, but one of the things that really bothered me that I really keyed in on was that things like gardening and farming and, you know, self-sustainment is something that we have lost a great deal of over the past few generations.
Oh, absolutely. And
I think back to my grandfather, or my grandparents, I should say. They raised 7 children in the 40s and 50s. I mean, you really got to wrap your head around that. 7 children. most people, that have more than 3 kids today, most families with more than 3 kids are like, what's wrong with you? Why do you have 4 kids? Mm-hmm. What on earth do you have 5 kids for? How on earth do you even feed them? Yeah. And I think back to my grandparents, and they raised 7 children because they were self-sustaining. They had my grandfather and my grandmother had a garden on their property that was probably, I remember from when I was a kid, that it was probably half the size of a football field. And you name it, they grew it: potatoes, carrots, green beans, you name it, it was there. They weren't really farmers. It's not like they did it as a means of income. They did it for their own survival. They had a chicken coop. They had 2 or 3 cows out in the pasture, and that's how they lived. My grandfather even had the foresight whenever he built that house. He planted acorn and pecan trees on the property, so even the trees on their home would give them some sort of sustenance, and that's something that you don't see today.
Sure.
My uncles, my uncles, they would go out. They'd hunt squirrel, they'd hunt rabbit, they'd hunt anything. They lived, near a major river. They'd go to the river and they'd fish. That's how they fed themselves. If you expected the average American family to do that today, they'd starve, plain and simple.
Forget it, man. Especially people in the big cities. It's funny that you bring this up, because I was talking to a guest last night, and I said the same thing. My grandfather brought me up, and he grew up in the Depression. He fought in World War II, and the stories that he told me was just, unbelievable. And I don't think, today's generation and some of the younger people that they're bred for this, that they could handle it if there was another world war or a collapse. There would be millions and millions of people dead in the United States.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I don't doubt that at all. I don't doubt that for a second. And it's something I keep telling myself, that it's a trade, that's a skill that I want to try to at least have some knowledge of. If you ask me right now, could I go in my backyard and plant a garden? No, I couldn't. And I need to learn that. It's something that I need to know. I want to be able to have a garden where I could grow, vegetables and stuff like that, and be able to do that. I wouldn't have the first clue how to do that, and I know that I'm not alone. And you're absolutely right. Millions of people would die from starvation within, a couple of weeks, maybe a month. And what do people do when they're hungry and they're starving and they don't have food? They go steal it. They go rob it from somebody else, because, human beings, we're bred for survival. We're going to go out fighting at the end. And it's shameful to say in our human condition that, I don't have food, I don't have water, I'm going to go find it somewhere by any means necessary. And that's also why millions of people would die, because people would be killing each other for food and water. We're very comfortable, we're very spoiled. I think that's probably the strongest word you could use. We're spoiled. We like being able to go to McDonald's and hit the drive-thru, pick up the phone and order a pizza. We'd love to be able to do that, but take that away and what are you going to do? It's just not something that we're prepared for, and I don't think we ever will be.
Yeah, and that's what I try to teach at the Disaster Survival Network and my magazine. We're trying to inform people as much as we can for the people who want to be informed. There's a lot of people who you just can't reach. They don't want to be woken up. They're too comfortable in their current, I don't know what you call it, reality or simulated world, whatever they're living in. They don't want to be yanked from it. But one of these days, it's the shit is going to hit the fan, like they say, and I think it's happening now. To tell you the truth, I think that these times will be looked back upon as World War III, and I think there's a complete media blackout. I mean, when I go to turn on the news in the morning, the retarded stories that I hear, is just ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
When there's major news stories going on, they'll have someone on discussing how to make, like, blueberry pancakes. And
or they'll talk about Justin Bieber and his latest, big, controversy, or Miley Cyrus or whatever. But, yeah, you don't see the real news. You never will.
And then when I try to talk to someone, people don't want to hear the real news. It's too depressing. I said, what are you talking about? It's the news. It's the news.
Exactly.
That's what they're supposed to, if they wanted to watch a soap opera, we'd go watch a soap opera. When we tune into the news, we want to hear real news. So,
yeah.
I don't know, man. I think a reset is coming. I think a major reset is coming. We've been too comfortable for too long. And I started prepping. I became a prepper. I got involved with the Disaster Survival Network, and I went from having like 2 weeks of food at a time, and then I started building a survival pantry where I joined a wholesale food club, and I tried to buy a lot of beans and a lot of rice, nothing that was needed to be refrigerated. And now I have 3 months worth of food, and my next goal is 6 months and then a year.
That's outstanding.
Yeah, because if anything happens, no one's coming to save you. If the government does collapse, there's going to be no food stamps. There's going to be no Social Security. The United Nations will be here, and they'll be handing out rice to people in major cities.
Yeah, and kind of circling back to Katrina, I saw it firsthand that, well, I shouldn't even say Katrina. I could say from my own experience. I live near the Gulf of Mexico, and I've lived here for 13 years, and I have endured 2 very major hurricanes, very major, that completely, disrupted our way of life. I mean, we've had some smaller ones come through that do a little damage, but the power comes back on in a couple of days. But I've been through 2 of them: Hurricane Ike in 2008 and Hurricane Rita, which was only a few months after Katrina. And the thing that I saw that really disturbed me on both of them, and it still disturbs me to this day, and I saw this from friends, coworkers, from people that I know, the air of entitlement, the somebody please come save me mentality. And that's a very dangerous, mindset to be in. I saw it with my own eyes. I mean, I got so tired of listening to people complain, when's the electricity coming back on, or, when can I get cable? And it's like you really have to learn to suck it up and go with the flow and roll with the punches. You have to have that mentality that you're a grown adult. Take care of yourself. Don't expect, society, don't expect the government, don't expect anybody to come save you, because they might not. And for me, probably the most eye-opening and I could honestly say was the starting point from where I wrote the first novel, Collapse, was during Hurricane Ike. It came through about 3 a.m. and, laid waste, to our region, and the power didn't come on for 2 weeks, probably 3. But I think for me, probably the most profound moment of my adult life was probably a few hours after. No, I would say, it blew through about 3 a.m. We went to sleep and woke up, and, we were trying to, kind of, survey the damage and whatnot. What really troubled me was for probably the first 12 hours, maybe 16 hours, we were completely and 100% cut off from the entire world. And I mean in every way imaginable. Of course, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have landlines. We certainly didn't have the internet. We couldn't turn on none of the local